trying something a little bit new. We're going to record the presentation, that way it can be viewed as a slideshow or as a recording here. You can see our agenda here tonight. I do have some visitors here, so we have Dr. Kaiser back, so we were able to give him Mrs. Sinawah hat for the stomach, so he's got that to keep his head warm. So we also have Mike and Stacy from Tecton. You guys want to raise your hands there? And we have Jeremy Ogle from Moat Park. So Moat Park's our architect on the future projects that we're going to be doing, and then Tecton is our project manager or construction manager for the project. So today we're going to spend a lot of time, there will be a lot of time spent on the potential renderings for the building project. We'll touch a little bit on the finances of it, and then we will get into the strategic planning document as well. There are documents at the tables. Here is a stack of extras, and you can steal some off of some of these other tables as well. Steve Jeffries, I think, uploaded it on the website, and then emailed a copy out earlier today as well. So what we're going to do with that is we give you guys time to look at it tonight. Feel free, you have pens at your tables, mark it up, take it home, mark it up some more, and then we're going to send out probably next week a survey. We haven't created it yet, so we need to spend some time creating the survey. Send it out to you guys to get some feedback on the actual strategic planning document itself. We want to get some input on that. A couple questions we had were about the mission, vision statements, and those sorts of things. So we have some recommendations in there. Doesn't mean it's set in stone. It's something that we can discuss as a group and then take to the school board for any adjustments, or if we want to keep it the same going forward. So you see our agenda there. We'll go through all of this. If you guys have questions related to the building project, the renderings that we put out, anything from the finances with it, that's why we brought Tecton and Moat Park here. For anything that I can't answer, they can provide some additional detail for as well. First thing, we're talking success stories. So actually, Mrs. Speakman and I were talking about these kids today, so I'm gonna put you on the spot. You get to share these, so.
So for the second year in a row, Mrs. Sinawah High School and Mrs. Sinawah Community Schools has had both of Green County's 2 Lilly scholarships. So that's pretty awesome.
And like her and I were talking about earlier today, truly it's winning the lottery. I mean, these kids made $250,000 plus for themselves. I mean, truly, so.
And what's really awesome is that Sam and Adira are both immigrants. So I don't know, I'm not from the Lilly Committee or anything like that, or from the Community Foundation, but I would wager a bet that they are probably some of our first students in Grant County that are immigrants. So that's just really awesome and speaks to all the work that we all do, that we've had now 4 in the past 2 years. So.
That's awesome. So, and again, we talked about this before. That really is a K through 12 approach. A lot of credit goes to the high school on that, but these kids were here before then as well, and so credit to everybody that's been in contact with them and helped them through that process. This is a new one, kind of hard to read, a lot of colors, a lot of data there, but the DOE releases data on student transfers twice a year. So we have a fall ADM count day and then a winter ADM count day. That's our student enrollment count days. So Mrs. Sinawah Community Schools ranks 9th out of 290 schools in Indiana in terms of net student transfers. We have 1,765 in-district students. We retain 1,614 of them. And then we have 700 out-of-district students that come to Mrs. Sinawah. That gives us a net of a plus 549. Now what you'll see on here is, I put that number right here in green. These schools that are in orange, those schools have a virtual school option, which really, in my opinion, skews the data. Those students don't report on site. For example, Union School Corporation, they have a in-district of 370 students, but net public transfers of 7,438 students. All those students are online. They're never on site or anything like that. It's like Indiana K-12 Academy and all that. So really, when you factor that into that equation, we're really 4th in the state in terms of the student transfer. So I say that to say that we do a great job of not only attracting out-of-district students, but retaining our in-district students here at Mississinawa. And that's attributed to the staff and everything that's going on within the school community. The other one that I wanted to show was Mississinawa ranked 16th out of 290 schools in the state for the percentage of in-district students that we retain. So right here, you'll see that we retain all but 9% of our students. So we're only losing 9% of our students to a virtual school, an online school, or another brick and mortar school. That's really good overall when you look at that data. So these are just some staff spotlights from our monthly board meetings. I won't go through these, but you guys, we post these on social media and everything, but just want to be able to let you guys see those faces from our staff, our students. One that I do want to bring recognition to is Leslie and Spike. They were able to be recognized for the Corridon Award just for their years of service within the community. So if we give them a round of applause for their years of service. Okay, so that's it for mine. I just want to share a few of those success stories. Does anybody else, staff, community-wise, have anything that they want to share at this point in time before we move on? Yeah, Leslie.
I read through the latest updates and stuff. I just continue to be impressed with how much thought and information that you and your team are putting in to this important project that we have going on. And I hope that everyone in the room, whether you're supporting or not supporting, that have the courage enough to at least share all this positive data that's going on, because we are the face and the voice of our community and our school system, and they deserve to have our very best put forward each and every day. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. And I put some of the meat and potatoes together on the strategic plan, going through the data that we gathered from this group here. But ultimately, Jacob and Chris, where are you guys at? Are you guys around in here anywhere? Okay, Jacob and Chris, those guys are rock stars, truly. They make me look smart, but I'm not going to take the credit on it. It's all them. So they jazz it up and do all the neat tricks on it. I do enough to keep my head afloat, but they really did. We've met a couple times over the last few weeks on the strategic planning document, and they gather a lot of data and put a lot of time in on that, and we still have a lot more work to do on the document. I would say at this point in time we're 80-ish% done. My goal is for us to be 98, 99, maybe 100% done by February with current data. And obviously what we talked about, this is an ongoing document for us going forward, so we're going to continuously be working on it. Once we do get the document finalized, going into next school year, we will set dates for community members to come out and review that document and say, okay, yeah, this works, this is working, this is not working, and give you guys updates on that. And you'll notice, Jacob, does it start page 14? Is that where our grid starts? Is that right? 13? So you'll notice on page 13, we start tracking our goals and really our action items through that. We're going to mark them green, yellow, red. Green meaning it's been done. Yellow means we're working on it. Red means, okay, we know we need to do this, but we really haven't started. So our next step within that document is going to really be looking at that, assigning tasks to individual staff members to work on. And there's a lot of things in there. There's a lot of good things you'll notice that we're doing, that we check some boxes on from this group that they've cited that we need to be working on. There's some things that we're working on, but we haven't gotten there yet. And there's some things that we're aware of. Hey, it's a shortfall for us, and we have to get that started. And we have to have a plan for that going forward. So takeaways from last meeting, I'm not going to read through this, but the big thing that I noticed from takeaways on it was facilities, that we want better for our students, we want better for our staff. That was definitely evident in this. Other items that were takeaways within the last meeting was some of our struggles within math scores and the student population that we're serving. Again, things that we are aware of, things that we are working on as a district. One thing I did notice within the document is that this collective group is very collaborative, and that was one thing that was noted in there from our takeaways, was that the group really could come together and have differences of opinions, but then come to a kind of a consensus at the end of it once they shared stuff. So that was some other items that were shared throughout that. I'm not going to go through all this because it's actually pretty small on this one. One thing I will say, sorry, I had to adjust this from PowerPoint to Google Slide to now a keynote presentation. So one thing I will say on this is strategies to motivate the community, how to get financial and dates to the community. Okay, so big thing there, my cell phone is on everything. So give my cell phone out, 765-475-6412. I've told people I will sit down and talk to somebody one-on-one. I will talk to entire groups. Doesn't matter. I will go to the local bar and present to people at the local bar. I will go to the church. It doesn't matter. I will present whatever information needs to be presented to whoever wants to hear it. They don't have to necessarily like it or agree with it, but I do want them to hear the facts and the truths of the matter. I don't want misconceptions out there about what's going on in the district in terms of finances. They can hear the truth, and then they can decide from there what they want to do with that. Talking about cost of facilities, we're going to talk about the cost of the facilities improvement tonight. We're going to touch on it a little bit. Won't go into a lot of detail. We put out a presentation. We had a work session on Monday night this past week with our entire financial team. We had a technology issue, didn't record the entire thing, so I re-recorded that Tuesday morning, summarizing everything that was said, put that out. I would encourage everybody to watch that and look at that. It really talks about our property tax analysis and the pros and cons within the district and why we have to do what we have to do in order to make adjustments or improvements to the community. A lot of information that was missing was noted to just the building project and facilities. We do have renderings. We've sent that out to you guys. We're going to go through that tonight as well. Again, these are conceptual. These are very beginning. We have rough square footages, rough number of classrooms, very beginnings. As we dig through this and we really look at our needs and priorities we have priorities from our staff, we have priorities from the strategic planning committee from the survey. Next step's going to be getting priorities from the entire community. And we're going to take all those priorities. We also understand we have internal priorities as a district. Just because Northview's roofing or Westview's roofing is ranked lower in a priority doesn't mean it's going to stay there. Okay, I have internal knowledge that the roof of Northview and Westview is at the end of life, so we have to move that up. I mean, there's no choice in that. Those are things that we have to do from an internal standpoint. But we're going to present this information to you. We'll get additional surveys out to the entire community to get that feedback on the building project and look at potential ideas and different solutions to problems that we may have. So next step we're going to go into is really talking about the building project and looking at those items that we have there. Again, I've mentioned that we have Moak Park here, Tecton here tonight. So as we go through this, if you guys have questions, feel free to ask them. Ask me. We have Mike, Stacy, and Jeremy here. They can chime in as well. Ted's around here and his guys. They have that insight knowledge about the facilities even better than I do. They deal with the facilities on a day-to-day basis, so those guys can provide some additional information as well. Okay, so thank you. I want to thank Jeremy Orwell and his team at Moak Park for putting that together. We do have renderings for the other buildings, but they're not finalized at this point in time. As we get those, there will be more renderings of those. And again, these are conceptual. These are the very early stages of what we're looking at and what we're thinking. I can guarantee you that it will not be exactly this in the end. There's going to be adjustments along the way as we go through these surveys. So how this started is and Leslie, you can correct me on this, back in like 2012-ish, is back when really you guys started planning and doing facility studies here within the district. And that's lasted, I mean, really 10, 12 years at this point in time. Several studies, and the most recent started 2 or 3 years ago, getting companies in here, architects, engineers, project managers. And I'm not talking just 1 or 2, I'm talking half dozen, 8 different companies, architects, engineers, and the common denominator always comes down to what we need to do and what the priority is for the long term of the district. And that truly was what we do with RJ Basket. And understanding the amount of money we spend there, we ran the numbers today. It's about $800,000 per year of operational cost that's going into that building. And so that really started to lay out the priorities for the district on what we need to look at going forward. So this was our internal, I would say, administrative priority list, kind of ranking from top priority down to lowest priority. Again, probably definitely hard to see for you guys right now, but you'll be able to see it on the presentation if you look at it as we upload it. But you can see that scope that we created. We took that, we approached companies to look at, okay, what's this gonna cost for us to be able to do this? What's the timeline for doing this? And talking to several companies. We had, in the final stages, we had 4 companies involved in the final stages of that process and looking at it. So when we look at the surveys, and I want to thank Stacy and his team at Tecton for putting the survey together and gathering all the data for us on this. When we look at staff surveys, you can see priorities from 1 to 21 for the high school, how they rank there. Big ones, the movable partition walls here within the building. Okay, so this slide shows the priorities based upon the strategic planning committee. Okay, our next layer to this is going to be putting this survey out for the community, and it'll be interesting to see how those all compare and stack up for each building. Quite evident from the staff surveys, it was pretty one-sided, tear down the annex and 1950 structure, but keep gym, cafeteria, science, art wing area, and repurpose those spaces. When we sent it out to the strategic planning committee, we had 28 respondents, 22 in favor of demolishing 1950s portion and annex, keeping the gym, new science art wing area, and cafeteria to repurpose for new use, and then 6 respondents in favor of renovating RJB. One thing I do want to touch on with that is we went through that process. That was our initial thought. Even when I came in, that was Leslie worked that way. That was my initial thought coming into is, hey, let's renovate this. Well, as we dug into it, like, okay, how do you feasibly renovate this building? Can it be done? Yes, it can be done. We would have to move half of the students into mobile trailers for, Stacy, you guys, 1.5 years, 2 years, and then switch them, move them into the renovated part, then move them back in, and then do the other half of the building. So you're talking 3-4 years of half of the student body at RJB being in trailers out in the parking lot, working on class work while we're renovating the building. So that was an impact on the decision. And the trailers aren't cheap. I mean, you can rent them and lease them, but you're going to be in excess of $7 to $10 million just for that rental or leasing of those trailers during that time. And so that weighed into it. And then we weighed into, okay, at the end of the day, we still have a 1950s building that we're not going to touch every single plumbing, every single electrical item in. So there's still going to be issues. Are we going to be able to correct all the water infiltration issues? Those are things that we weighed in the back of our mind with that facility and looking at, okay, is it wise of us and is it the right thing for us as the administrative team and as a school board to recommend to the community to spend $40 to $50 million to renovate a 75-year-old building? And when we came down to it, we looked at it, and that's not the smart decision. That's not something I could go to the taxpayers with and say. Now, if everybody comes to me and says, "My God, Jeremy, you got to do that," then okay, hey, that's what the community wants, and that's what we're going to do. If that's what the community really wants, we will do that. But ultimately, that can't be a recommendation that I can make to the school board at any point in time. It's not smart use of taxpayer dollars, truly. So move down the list, Northview. So this is the Northview staff survey results. Again, highest to lowest is kind of what it ranks through on there. This is Northview Strategic Planning Committee survey results. Obviously, you'll see on this high need is the additional space, classroom space, et cetera. And you'll notice in our priority list that we put 12 classrooms. That's not to say we're adding exactly 12 classrooms. An average size classroom is 1,000 square feet, so we need to add 12,000 square feet of class type space. So that could be a group room space, that could be STEM space, that could be a traditional classroom. It could be any of those, but we are saying that we need to add roughly 12,000 square feet onto that building to accommodate the needs that we have there. When we go to Westview, this is the staff survey results from Westview. So add PK through 1 classrooms. Again, space, looking at space as a need. We know that's a need in all of our buildings. This goes Northview. Oh, I think I put the wrong one in there for you guys. Sorry about that. That should have been Westview's, but similar process. Westview's was very similar with the strategic planning committee. Adding the classrooms was a big one. Now we're going to get into some renderings. So this is a conceptual rendering of the front of Northview Elementary. So one of the things that we heard was the office space is very tight. We have, when this building was built and then renovated, the office space is very, very tight. Staff restrooms is at a premium. I think you guys, Amanda, you share what you have staff restroom wise. Two staff restrooms. So for how many staff? 85 staff. Okay, so that's a little bit of a weight. So, so we talked about moving that office out, and part of that, staff restrooms. We have students that have more needs nowadays than what they had 20 years ago. We have community agencies, McKee Counseling, Radiant Health. We have all these different agencies that come in. We have DCS in the building consistently. We have law enforcement in the building consistently. We don't have private areas for those agencies to meet with students and or families. The common problem here in the high school is the movable partition walls. They're paper thin. Okay, confidentiality is issue. We had an issue last week with a student, and that was part of the issue was paper thin walls. That escalated the situation further to where law enforcement had to be involved in that even more. So Northview, actually I'll go back to this. So part of that is bumping that office out. Bumping that office out, creating some more space. That was part of the rendering concept there. Other thing, if you go to Northview or Westview, traffic is a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. Probably one of the biggest headaches that we deal with. So looking at different ways, and again, very early, very conceptual is, okay, how can we add some parking lot space, create a different traffic flow pattern? We are still working on that. To say that this is the ultimate solution would be inaccurate at this point in time, but this is an option. You can see in the red, that's the expansions. Expansion/renovations there, adding classrooms on both wings of the building to allow growth, looking at adding potentially student or staff restrooms on these wings so teachers don't have to come all the way to the office, reconfiguring the office so that there's restrooms facing the hallway as well as restrooms inside of the office area so it's dual purpose. It can be accessed from either side. Okay, so we'll go to Westview, looking at expansion at Westview. Okay, parking, we've looked at, this is kind of a problematic area. I don't even know if you consider that a 2-lane area, that little drive there. But closing that off, expanding parking. Again, you'll see in the red, the expansions of classrooms there. Whether we would leave preschool there or not, again, up in the air on what we would do on that. That is a proposed option on this. But we do know whether preschool stays there or not, we need to add space to the building. Cafeteria is very tight. Northview years ago had their renovation done to the cafeteria that added some room there. Looking at a similar type of process or project for Westview to be able to expand that cafeteria, make it more usable and functional. Okay, so RJB, what are we looking at doing with that? So you'll see the demo sections here. Those are our most problematic areas, and maintenance guys, you guys chime in at any point in time because you guys are the ones that deal with it all the time. Both those sections have basements in them, water issues, asbestos, among others. So we're looking at demoing those. The arts and science wing and really the cafeteria is in pretty good shape overall. There is some work that needs to be done with the gym in terms of the locker rooms, and there's some water issues that we would have to deal with. There's tuck pointing on the brick that needs to be done, but we felt the value of the gym to the school and the community was too valuable to look to demolish. I think it's too good of a space, and that was kind of the common consensus as we went through this facility study and analysis with it. And it's really a staple of the community. It's at the heart of the town. Last thing we wanted to do was give that ground up and it be turned over to somebody else, and it'd be an eyesore for the community. So our thought process is, okay, let's revitalize this for the district. Can we put administration offices there? Can we make a community room out of it? Can we keep the gym and update the gym? The thought process, and again, we're still early in the stages, is we be able to move transportation all in here, potentially build a transportation center here with some offices, and be able to have busing in this area. So it'd be centralized. Right now, buses have to go to Westview to the fuel tanks to fuel up, and then they're actually parked. Ted, correct me if I'm wrong, they're parked back in here right now. Okay, so we've had issues with tires being slashed and air let out, and all kinds of stuff. So it'd be nice to be able to have buses in a contained area. So just for safety for staff, community members, students, etc. So that's the thought process with RJB there. Also, RJB, another thing that factored into us about reusing RJB for day-to-day student activities is the traffic flow there. I can't tell you how many accidents just in my short time here that have happened there. I mean, just adjacent. It truly is, and there's no way around it. We are truly landlocked there, but we can use it for different purposes. And having limited traffic flow during high traffic times would be one way around that. So if we moved admin offices over there, one proposed thing with the current admin building would be turning into a daycare / preschool. That's one option, okay? Right now, what I noticed from the surveys is most people would prefer to keep the preschool at Westview, okay? And those are things that we're gonna take into consideration through this project, because we are very, again, just because this is an idea doesn't mean it's definitely gonna happen. But there are options out there. We can always look at options for RJ Basket for it not being an admin center. It could be something different. There are tons of options that we can use that square footage and space for. Okay, so moving on to the high school. This is the one we have obviously the most renderings on at this point in time. The thought process, again, moving 6th, 7th, and 8th over there, you can see the black roof area is, you have the office addition up here, which would be a separate middle school addition or entrance point. You have a 6th, 7th, 8th addition here, and then a field house addition there. I had a question about how many classrooms are in there. Again, we're very early in the process. We're looking at this point in time between 30 and 40 classrooms in that addition. As we look to prioritize needs for as we combine staffing, we don't need 2 art rooms necessarily. We don't need 2 band rooms. We don't need 2 music rooms. As we combine those spaces, we can decrease the amount of overall needed square foot by shared spaces. Another concern that we had was, well, if middle school goes there, how are you going to keep middle school and 6th, 7th, 8th graders away from high school? Well, that's part of the design process in this, is have a designated separation area for them. They have a separate cafeteria. They have a separate office area. The only thing that's essentially shared by them is gyms, potentially could be shared, but if you have a field house, okay, then you have different designated spots for them. Between a field house, auxiliary gym, and a main gym, you have several different designated spots for middle school versus high school students. Common spaces that would be shared by the students, if you think about maybe esports or robotics or band or choir or any of those, the students aren't going to be in there at the same time. So there's different, we already share a lot of those teachers, or all those teachers really, and they would have different class periods for each of those students. And so the corridors are going to be set up accordingly so that those students are not commingling during the normal days. High school would have a separate entrance as well, obviously. Okay, getting into the blueprints, what you'll notice with kind of the salmon colored areas, those are the movable partition walls that would all have to be renovated. And that's not a light job. Stacey, you want to share what that might involve?
What it might change from getting into it. So it's right there, obvious example there. So when you pull those out, it opens up a lot of questions. You have ceilings inside of those, you have to redo ceilings perhaps. You have HVAC in there and then lighting, and you have to think, well, we're in here, does that require, or does it make sense to update that because it's a end of life? Things we have to figure out when we get further into it. So, it does kind of open up a can of worms. When you go back into it, another big question is, are we gonna be satisfied with drywall walls with insulation in them for sound, or do we want masonry? If you want masonry, you have to say, well, does the floor slab support a masonry wall? So obviously there are a lot of questions. We made some assumptions and we've looked at the potential impact for it. And then what do you do with the students when you're doing that? So one of our ideas for that is build the addition, move high school students into the addition, change the walls in there, fix that, put the kids back in there, and then move the middle schools over here, and then tear down the old building over there. So we've been thinking through a lot of that, but there's obviously a lot to figure out still.
Okay, so that's the salmon collar area. Then you'll see that part of it's renovated media center. Obviously, that's, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, looks fairly original. I don't know, there might have been some updates along the way, but fairly original. Definitely not conducive. The overwhelming data from the surveys was electrical needs in classrooms are not, and we actually had discussions with our Teachers Association today about that. We can look at temporary solutions for that, but it's not ideal unless we do construction. I mean, four outlets in a classroom doesn't meet 2025 standards. It just doesn't. I mean, that's just the reality of it. Talking about separating space. So we'd be able to use the main high school kitchen, have a warming kitchen over here, so we're not having to buy all new equipment for this. We can just have warming materials or warming units over there, have a warming kitchen. This is middle school cafeteria, 6, 7, 8. We have some classroom space here. Obviously, middle school classrooms, 2-story, right here. Completely separate from what is proposed as the high school space. Then also, what we looked at is, okay, we have 6, 7, 8 over here. Yes, we're gonna keep RJ Basket Gym. Big complaint we hear is our practice times, our gym availability in general. If you go into the high school main gym right now, we have the plastic bleachers or resin bleachers there. They're beat up. They're beat up because baseball and softball are in there. They don't have anywhere else to go in the winter months. And I'm not going to tell teams that they can't practice when they want to practice. I mean, that's not fair to them. Those kids want to be in there. They want to be working. They have nowhere else to go. So if you have a field house, you can have some parameters set up to prevent that, so that they're not having to use the main gym and the bleachers are getting beat up. A couple things on this, again, very, very early with the renderings on this is, okay, do we incorporate a track as part of that, a running track in there? Okay, so those are ideas. Do we do 2 to 4 lanes? Do we try to make it a 6 to 8 so we can host indoor track meets? Those are all considerations that have to be considered. Obviously, if you do a 6 to 8 lane track, you're adding square footage. Adding square footage means adding dollars. So those are things that we have to keep in our back of our mind as we look through this. But ultimately, this is an early concept of what we're looking at within this project. The other couple things I want to note is the renovations to esports and those wings, and then also to choir and band, refinishing those spaces as well, are part of things that we're looking at within this. This, again, first floor, this is the first floor concept there. This is the second floor concept for that. I do want to note one thing, and Jeremy, actually, why don't you come up here real quick? Talk about the elevator. You'll do a better job than I will on that. The elevator for the main gym.
So one of the things that we noted as we were taking a look at the building is that the main gymnasium, which is second floor, is not ADA accessible. So as we looked at adding the second floor for the middle school, we figured out a way to actually provide accessibility to both the main gymnasium and to the second floor of the middle school. So it's kind of like taking advantage of different opportunities to provide accessibility and provide improvements within the high school as we take a look at different improvements going forward.
Okay, this just shows an aerial view. Another thing we talked about doing is by adding tennis courts, we talked about moving them this way and taking out some parking. We talked about going to the woods. We talked about coming this way. Talked about reconfiguring baseball and softball to be able to allow for some additional athletic parking and parking on that side of the campus. Also turfing baseball and softball. So we're thinking, okay, if we're moving 6th, 7th, and 8th over here, and we have football, soccer, all these other programs are going on trying to share this field or this space out here. If there's turf on those fields, they can be used during that season for practices as well. One thing that we have to consider in this is cross country. Our cross country course goes through that area, so that's something we have to take into consideration that we haven't thus far. I mean, it's in our minds, but we haven't accounted for it entirely. So again, this just shows that layout. Again, very early, very conceptual with that. An idea would be if we could have some sort of centralized grandstand for baseball and softball that could be shared amongst them and give them their space. Right now, is Brooks in here? Steve, are you in here? Okay. Where's softball and baseball going out of right now for like changing, equipment storage, and all that? White building? And both of them have, they both have a shed or something out by them, right, for like storage and stuff, correct? Okay. Again, just another aerial one, and you guys have I think all of you guys have probably seen this one. This is just a night shot of that. Again, going back to this, the darker black roofing, that's the addition portions. You can see there we would also have a separate athletics entrance. It's really, it's better if you can keep students and patrons out of your academic wings during athletic events. So by having that separate athletic entrance, that makes that a lot more feasible to be able to do. And again, a big thing in this building is the signage around. I mean, the first time I came here, I wasn't sure where was the front door at. I mean, where do I go? And that's a common complaint there. So another thing we've looked at, we have middle school, we have athletics entrance, then we have high school entrance, and really having those defining points there. This is just a really cool picture here. I really like that. I mean, talk about facing the main drag around the school and having Indian head that's lit up at night like that. I think that just really sends a statement and shows the pride in the corporation and in the community. Again, just the kind of a mock-up of the front athletic entrance. There's a mock-up of the middle school. Don't have a rendering of what the high school entrance would look like, but something very, very similar for a high school entrance. Kind of getting inside of the buildings, and Jeremy, chime in on this. This would be the middle school entrance area, is that correct? Middle school cafeteria. I think we got the point there. Is that the athletic entrance? Yep. Okay, same athletic entrance area. This is going into looking inside of the field house, looking at, we've looked at, 2-court field house, 3-court field house, bleachers, no bleachers, running track, no running track, etc. I mean, so those are all options and things that we are evaluating and looking at. Again, these are just very, very early in that process. Thought process of dropping down curtains in between courts so you can separate practice spaces and such. Okay, so finances. We presented to the board on this on Monday. The financial team, which is Stiefel, Baker Tilly, Ice Miller, Policy Analytics. We started, I want to say roughly with 12 scenarios. We were able to narrow it down to 6. And then from those 6 scenarios, we really narrowed it down to 2 to present to the board. Now we presented all 6 of these scenarios, but really are advocating for 2 at this point in time. So again, I would encourage you, I'm not going to go into an hour-long presentation about the finances, because I mean you can watch that at any point in time on your own that we posted. But really it narrows down to, $113 million total. gets us everything we're talking about between demolishing portions of RJB, the renovations of the high school, adding the 6th, 7th, 8th here, doing everything we need to do at Westview and Northview. So it gets us everything from that needs priority list that I showed you at the very, very beginning that the administration staff has looked at and developed based upon our facility assessments that have been done over the last 12 years. And that's where we came up with that 113 million. So then I started looking at it and I'm like, okay, what can we scale back on? What can we scale back and what's a secondary option for the board to be able to consider? So we kind of said, okay, I think we could probably scale it down to and get 80% of what we really want and need from this project, and hit on our co-curriculars, hit on our elementaries, our academics, and a lot of those things, but we're gonna have to take some things off this list. And one of them would probably be the movable partition walls here at the high school. That would probably be a big ticket item that we would have to remove. That would be 85 million. Now, going through the financing, we have about $26 million of bonding capacity that we can take out really at any point in time and start projects. That money has really been allocated at this point in time to Northview and Westview, doing some roofing at the high school, doing some roofing at RJ Basket, and maybe a little bit of mechanical work and some asphalt. And that's that money, that's gone, that's it. We can't touch the high school with it. I can't do renovations at RJ Basket with it. There's not enough money to do those things. So the reality is if the community wants to do any of these things, it's going to have to be beyond what our bonding capacity is available for us. And so that's why we presented the board two different scenarios. $85 million project with essentially a $59 million referendum, or a $113 million project with an $87 million referendum. And so those are the two options, and the board hasn't decided at this point in time which way we're going to go. We're going to talk a little bit more next Monday about it, and we should have a decision made in the near future on that. So again, I go into a lot more detail in the video. If you haven't seen the video, please watch the video. A lot more detailed finances on that. One thing I want to know is, okay, well, what does this mean to me as a homeowner? What are my property taxes going to increase by? I mean, that's a fair question. That's a valid question. Everybody should be asking that question. So if you look for Mississippi View Schools, the average home is assessed value is $128,000. So when we look at that, if we would do an $85 million project, which is again that $59 million referendum, you're looking at a $478 annually increase to your property taxes. If you would go to the $113 million total project with a $87 million referendum, you're going up $698 there. So that talks about the average homeowner. Now, you say, okay, that's the average homeowner, but that's not me. Correct, that's not you. So our next step is by February is to have the property tax calculator where you can plug in your address, your property tax value in there, and then it'll tell you exactly to the dollar how much it's going to increase on that. So we're going to work with our financial team to have that ready to go. That'll be posted on the website as well. You guys will have more information on that also. So when we start looking at that, okay, hey, we can scale back. We can not do everything that we need to do in the project, and it's going to cost the average homeowner a little less than $500. Or we can look to go to $700, and that's something the board's going to have to weigh, and us collectively as a group are going to have to weigh going forward on what we want to do and recommend to the community. But again, I want to stress, ultimately, if nothing passes, the $26 million goes to Westview and Northview, and we do maintenance stuff at the high school in terms of high school and RJ Basket in terms of roofing, mechanical, and all that. And then from there, bonding capacity, I think that takes us to 2038. So unless there's significant AV growth, there's not going to be any projects in the future. I mean, that's just the reality of it. Be a Debbie Downer on that a little bit, but that's the true reality of the finances of the district. Okay, now, questions before we move on with anything. Questions, statements, concerns, anything. And please don't be shy. It's okay. Yep.
So you talked about all the students who come in from out of state. Does any of that cost affect them, or is it all covered by those students?
So in terms of out-of-district students, the way the funding works with out-of-district students, we get the ADM money, which goes directly into the education fund, which is Joe, we ran the numbers, $9,100 and some odd dollars of ADM funding. We factor in all the revenue that we get for them per student basis, in terms of special ed grants and all that kind of stuff, all the different complexity formulas. Then from there, we can transfer 15% of education fund dollars into the operations budget. Local tax dollars go towards your operations budget and to your debt service fund. This is all debt service related, so it goes. So we would get, they would not pay for those out of district students. Don't pay for that. So kind of question I get is, well, why do we take those out of district students then? Well, we have 700 out of district students at $9,000 a head. That's, do the math. I mean, that's $6 million. So I take $6 million from my education fund. I'm not just cutting staff, I'm cutting entire programs, I'm closing buildings is what I'm doing at that point in time. And so, yeah, there is a point where you gotta weigh the cost benefit analysis on that, truly. And we did do that this year. We looked at, I told the admin staff, as we look at this, we're gonna scrutinize out of district students when they apply. If they don't meet our standards, they're not coming in. If they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing when they're here, they're not gonna be back the next year. And I've been pretty blunt about that the entire time. From the funding aspect of it though, we do not get, other than the 15% transfer into the operations budget, we don't get anything for them for debt service. It's just the way school funding works for all districts. Yep.
Jeremy, let's say that we didn't have the transfers, we already know we would lose probably more than half of our programming if we would lose those students. But if we did lose them, our buildings are not gonna get any younger.
No.
So we absolutely have to do something to our facilities, whether we have at-risk students or not, we're gonna get to the point that we will not be able to afford to keep some of these buildings functioning.
It's correct, and that's where RJB came into it. And when we looked at the analysis of it, and honestly, I mean, Stacy, you guys were involved in that. Mo Park was involved in that. Ted and his guys were all involved in that. The board was involved in that. Looking through that, walking through that facility, we threw anything and everything against the wall to see what would stick in terms of thoughts and ideas. And from a financial perspective, that what we've come up with thus far makes the most sense. Now, what the space we keep there between the gym and what we would not demolish, what we do with that, still up in the air, but it's usable space. Those sections are, but the 1950s and the annex section, it's no longer a usable space. And could we put money into it? Absolutely, we could. I'm never going to recommend putting money to the board into that. It won't come from me. I mean, they'll have to find a new superintendent for that one. So it's the way it goes. Other ones? So Mike, if you want a new superintendent, you can, man. Okay, so again, this is hard to take on. I mean, it really is. And Dr. Kaiser, we talked about before, when you were at Beech Grove, you guys dealt with the same thing. You went from, I mean, you can talk about your AV there.
So very simply, when I went to Beech Grove, we were losing population. We had over 2,000 kids.
Here.
Thank you. A couple things to think about. So at Beech Grove, and same thing here, for every 10 kids you receive that transfer, that pays for a teacher. Think about that. You're 9,000, which is pretty darn good. That's because you're higher poverty rate. So that's 90,000. That's more than pays for your average teacher. The next 10 kids go to the kids that live in your school district. Kind of going back to your question. You know, my daughter, I lived out in Monrovia at the time. She came with me to Beech Grove. I said, boy, you're really good. You're worth $8,000 to us. So when you get those questions, well, why do you take transfer kids for the money? You know, we had $7 million because Beech Grove has 1,000 transfer kids today. And we take it for the money, but we started an ag science program. We enhanced all these academic programs because the first 10 transfer kids pays for that teacher. Think about an elementary. The next 10 kids go to your kids within the school corporation. Does Does that make sense? Because that's gonna be a huge selling point. Because again, at Beach Grove, we won 3 referendums, 2 of them were construction, and I got ahead of all the time. You gotta really communicate on that. Again, not to suggest and tell you what to do, but that building, I just asked your AD back there, so there's a YMCA in Marion, right? You can partner with the YMCA in Marion and turn that building, you know, that gym stuff into a YMCA type thing, and that might help sell that to the community also. In Westfield, we just opened a new YMCA, it's attached to our auditorium. So just think, you know, every one of those voters, how are you gonna get them? How many middle school kids do you have?
Andy, what you got?
500? Okay. So if you make sure that every one of those kids, parents are registered to vote, very serious about it. When we talk about referendum, it comes down to individual, and you have 500 kids. I'm sure most of those parents, they have younger kids, they want their kids to go to a new middle school. You get them registered to vote, everybody is related to everybody in this town, right? One way or the other. I go through Greentown on the way here. I used to be a head basketball coach, so I was just thinking, oh yeah, Big and all these people, and everybody's related. You gotta break it down by your kid. If you get, whether it's the full amount or the second amount, if you get your parents registered to vote, you will win. Okay? You gotta touch their heart, you gotta touch their soul, because it's all about them. So I'm thinking about that old building. People, I don't want to tear that down, but hey, you know, we're gonna help people, bring it here, you know, turn it into a community center, turn it into YMCA, turn it, that's gonna get you. So you have to break it down by component by component. How can I get votes? How can I get votes? How many high school kids do you have?
Well, almost 800.
800. Again, what's gonna attract them? You know, what are things, they don't care about the walls, but they do care about a new field house. Okay, are there things you can do for performing arts? Band parents vote. 55 and older vote. I've done 5 of these, and it's all about your data, but you got 500 kids, you get those parents registered, you know, 1 or 2 kids, they all have relatives, you can start just tagging away at how you get this done. If you choose to go the larger amount, you can win. But you gotta break it down, and you gotta hit the heart and soul of your community. They love your schools, right? Because no one's trying to take away your mascot, have they?
No.
Okay, that's never gonna happen. They live and breathe this community. And you can win this based on what you wanna do. You gotta get the heart and soul of those people. And you gotta register people to vote. You can register people to vote right now at your schools. Jeremiah, we're talking about that today. Set it up, parent comes in, hey, are you registered to vote? No, boom, can I register to vote? And then you copy their name. We give out gold cards to everybody 60 and older. You know why? Because they vote. They get free in any event. Okay? So they come in, you give them a gold card, you get their email address, okay? And guess what? When it's time to vote, you make sure you contact. So there's a lot of strategies on how to win this, but you can win it. I'm convinced, because all the things you're talking about are gonna be good for kids. So, any questions for me? Pizza was good, by the way.
Okay, other questions? I mean, yes? Say that again.
How is the projected cost of a project determined?
Stacy and Tech on, right on cue.
Hours and hours and hours of work. You know, we manage a lot of school work all over the place, and so we have a pretty good database of historical costs for projects like this that we've done in the past. So the way we budget is, you know, in the beginning, it's a conceptual budget. We know from experience that it's going to change to accommodate everything we learn along the way. So we have to kind of start kind of broad in our budgeting system based on historical data that we have. So we've done a conceptual budget and add them all up for that long list that you see right there. And in it, we include, you know, cost of contracts, to get a contractor on the job. We include contingency in there. We include, you know, general conditions costs, like gotta have temporary toilets and dumpsters like that during the process. And then there are also what we call soft costs for design, cost of issuance for bonds. All these kinds of things are all itemized on budgets that we've gone through to get to a bottom line. Okay, so that starts out with broad information that helps you all make decisions. This piece is this, the walls there are this much of a chunk of money, is that really worth it to us? Or maybe we need to scoot resources to something that's a little more important, so it's a process of getting from one end to the other of that.
And that's-
We have data on all
And
this.
that's why the priority lists are so important. We want priority lists for our staff. Obviously, our staff are in the buildings each and every day. Our maintenance team, they know what the problem areas are. But we also want community input on that. That's where the strategic plan, survey came in. The next step is really the outreach to the entire community, have them prioritize it. We take those 3 sets of data along with our conceptual budget, and then we start to create a master priority list. And that master, I mean, the board doesn't know this yet, but Stacy has a red line on this document. Everything above the red line is in budget, anything below the red line is out of budget. And so from there, we establish that and we go with it. That's going to be a common thing throughout the project, whether this is a $26 million project or a $113 million project or anything in between. That's how we have to operate within that construction process. Other questions? Yes?
So if we do all of this reconstruction and expanding, how long is it going to last before we outgrow it?
Before we outgrow it?
Yep.
Well, we shouldn't have that problem unless, so like the housing additions that are going in. We have the one out east of town, which is 40 or 50 houses. If you did 1 kid per house, there's 50 kids. If you have the quarry out here where, and I haven't heard numbers on this one, I've heard all kinds of different houses, but what I've heard from Mayor Rock on that is that's gonna be a long developed process. So the housing process in this, it would be the biggest impact to us in terms of outgrowing something. Adding this space here, we have intentionally designed this, and we are going to continue to intentionally design this to allow for that room of growth. So like the elementaries, I wouldn't have a concern with the elementaries at all. With what we are proposing in terms of the added classroom space, we have to analyze our preschool programming, I would say a little bit more. But the problem with that one would be the staffing. It's hard to find staffing for that preschool program and maintain it. So based upon what we're currently laying out for a preschool program, we would still have room for growth based upon the amount of staffing we can have. Every county in Indiana needs daycare options. Every county needs daycare options. And the problem with daycare options are you can't find people to staff. That's the issue. So for us, it's not going to be a space issue at the lower levels. It's more going to be a staffing issue more so than a space issue. Dr. Kaiser?
Just to answer your question about enrollment, you control your transfer kids.
Yes.
It's all based on capacity. So let's say you get 150 new kids live in the community, you're allowed to then say, we're not gonna take as many transfer kids to balance that. So you got a lot of flexibility, you'll have a target. We always had a target per room when I was at Beach Grove, and basically we would take kids first come, first serve based on the capacity. So if you grow in this enrollment, you can substitute and take less transfer kids, so it'll balance.
Yeah, so if you think like right now, fall enrollment was 2,314 students is what we had fall enrollment wise. Let's say adding this space, all these classroom square footage increase that capacity to say 3,000. Well, at that point, we know our capacity is 3,000 at that point, so we can grow up to that capacity, and then before we add people doing any additions, which probably won't at that point in time, we would just exclude certain, like Dr. Kaiser said, we would exclude out of district students because they would go to our in-district students if we grew naturally with that in-district enrollment. Yep.
I thought that was a good question about the strategic plan moving forward. If the project does go, I believe I've read where this strategic plan would actually immediately start planning for 5 years, 10 years from this point, so that we don't allow ourselves to get in the situation we're in right now, where we are at a point where we have to do something.
Correct.
I'm pretty sure I read that.
Yeah, it's planning long term, and that's where we're coming back every year with this group is, hey, these are issues that we're facing, and talking about that and training that well out in advance. students. And that's not to say that this hasn't been planned out, because it's, I mean, think about 2012 to 2025, there's been some thought process in that facility study and everything. But going to a community for a referendum is a big task. No superintendent wants to run a referendum. Maybe me and Dr. Kaiser are probably the two stupid ones in the room, but when I tell people, hey, this is what we're looking at doing, they're like, oh, better you than me, I would never do that. I mean, nobody, this is going to, I would not be recommending this unless I didn't believe it, and truly, because I don't get any, I truly don't benefit out of this. I mean, our students and our community benefit from this. I'm gonna see my kids a lot less. I'm going to go to a lot less events because I'm gonna be marketing this. I'm putting a ton more time in this during school hours and outside of school hours. There is no benefit for me personally. There's no benefit to the board. How much hours have you guys spent going through this stuff? I mean, as board members. We are doing this because we believe it's what's best for the students and for the community. That's why we are doing this. It's an energy sucker. I mean, that's what it is. Truth be told, it's gonna take a lot of energy. It's gonna take a lot of time, and it's gonna take ultimately a lot of community members that support it to bring it to fruition for us. So.
One thing you might tell them is, since the last project we have right now comes off in 2027, correct?
Yep, last part is 2027.
The current board, starting with Chris, we start doing things about everything that's gonna be paid for. And by the time this thing started, we won't owe anybody anything much at all, except the co-op just did, right?
Yep. So once we reissue, and that's why we have that $26 million of bonding capacity available, is because we're paying off those debts. And again, if you watch the video presentation, all schools have debt. All schools have debt. I mean, that's the reality. There's not a school in Indiana that's debt free. All schools have debt, and that's how you keep the buildings going. So, other questions, statements? Yes.
How do we raise our assessed value so it's not putting such a tax on the taxpayer?
So what Mayor Rock's doing with TIFs and everything's great. It brings in assessed value, but the district doesn't realize that AV right now. We will start to realize that AV increase in increment time periods. So there's $59 million of assessed valuation that we don't get revenue from, that we will start to get revenue from in, I think there's 2027, 2031, 2035, and that creates that will grow our AD, which creates bonding capacity for us, which would mean we can issue some bonds at that point in time to do roofs and asphalt and those sort of things without impacting taxpayers. It's not gonna raise their taxes. Bringing industry in is a big way. Bringing these housing developments, that's gonna increase the assessed value. We're 2% farm ground agricultural, and so these communities that have a lot of ag ground, that ag property values have skyrocketed the last few years. And we're primarily residential. We don't have a lot of, really don't have a lot of industry commercial. I mean, it's 75-ish% residential, and some older homes and stuff, not a lot of new developments and stuff. That impacts that. And we're geographically, we have a smaller footprint. So, there's nothing we can necessarily do as a school district. That's all from the community, and Mayor Rock's doing a great job of that, trying to bring industry and business in. Yep.
So on a referendum, you do capture the TIF AV. So.
Correct.
We get a budget order, we just got most of this. So our fiscal budget order, we have a construction referendum for 95 or 50 years ago. We have an operating referendum for 17. So when we did our first one at Beach Row, we didn't get that money. So we went to Senator McKinley, he came up with the formula. So now, when they're calculating, so when a new business comes in that's TIF'd, once you've done your construction referendum, you'll get that AV, which will lower that tax rate for every other taxpayer. So they'll never complain about TIFs, because once you do a referendum, you do gain from that. She'll drive a budget order.
Yeah.
If you go up $50 million in TIF dollars over the next couple of years, that will help that referendum tax rate, go down faster and keep taxes low.
So right now with TIFs, we don't get any
tax levy from those TIF districts or anything from circuit breaker loss, from the 1%, 2%, and 3% tax caps. Through a referendum, we would get tax dollars from the TIF districts at that point in time. They are not subject. They are not subject to being exchanged for those taxes through a referendum process. So that is a benefit to the residential homeowners within the city or within the school district for passing a referendum. Is now those industries that aren't paying a levy to the district would then have to pay that referendum rate then. Yeah, Chris?
And the only thing I would say too is, again, the more that our community grows, the more homes that we have, the more people that invest in that city, then that rate comes down.
Correct.
That rate comes down.
Correct.
The more we grow, the more people we have that are buying homes, the more homes we build. Even though we don't, recap the tip like we would, we will get the benefit of, once those new homes are built, those individuals come in, and we'll get the benefit. That'll reduce the overall tax bill.
Yep, absolutely. Yes, sir.
As far as the facilities, I think this is the time to think about safety and security.
Absolutely. So we've been having Steve Quater over here. He's been doing safety. We talked about it last couple of weeks. It is heavy. There's some stuff I debated about putting in this presentation. I don't think now's the time because we're very early in the conversation. But there's some very, I'll just say cool. There's some very cool companies out there. Verkada's one of them, where we can update security systems. Steve 911 Inform is that what it's called? So we've actually had several meetings here last couple of weeks about school safety. That would be a big thing that I would target through this process. You think about like RJB and even this building. We do very well with what we have, but there are some technology things that we can do. Door access controls, cameras, Verkada systems, absolutely phenomenal. And if we can get the county to work with us and do that 911 Inform, I'll have information on that when we get out eventually once we work through that process. But that is a big thing because that's something that was evident throughout the strategic planning process was student wellness, school safety, etc. And that's just a reality. I mean, because you got to be prepared for the worst case scenario ultimately. And I think we do a really, really good job here with that, with what we have, but our facilities need that upgrade to take that into account. Any others? Okay. Well, we'll move on then. So just a quick recap, we're going to get into strategic planning, and before I go into this, again, as you guys look through this building project stuff and we go through surveys, please reach out. I mean, we had somebody mentioned before about the new addition being for high school students versus for the middle school students. I don't think that's a bad idea, okay? So it's for us to take that back and look at that and say, okay, and then the main high school entrance should face to the south, right there, instead of being off to the side facing to the west. So those are different things that we can look at and look through with architects and engineers and, hey, is that feasible? Is that viable? What are those options? So as those concepts come to mind or different thoughts and ideas, bring them to us. I mean, I don't have all the answers. A lot of this process has been done by us putting our heads together between me, Ted, our administrators, Tecton, Moak Park, and just looking at different ideas and what makes sense from a budgetary standpoint and from safety, security, and just academic programmings. So going into strategic planning again, hey, what do you believe? Okay, that's the heart check. We've talked about that already. Okay, what do you know? That's the research. And then what do we want? Okay, that's the vision. So what I did is I put these in charts, and I'm not gonna waste you guys' time and read through this. Again, this is posted on the website. You guys can go through this. But what I went through and did is I put academics. Okay, I put from the top categories. Once we voted and re-voted on these, what were our top categories for academics for believe, know, want? Put that in there on that. Do the same thing for careers, okay? What were our top choices for believe, know, and want? For wellness, again, top choices for believe, know, and want. Facilities, okay? Again, top choices, believe, know, and want, going through those. So then we get into the nuts and bolts of the strategic planning process and the strategic planning document. And so what are goals for our students at Mississinawa Community Schools?
So what we've done, I sat down with Jacob and I took the data and the feedback that we got from you, sat down with Jacob and Chris, and we went through and we started developing some goals, okay? So that's our focus area. And then from there we went, okay, what are our learning key actions and metrics? Okay, so you can see that starting on page 13. Yep, page 13. What's it go to? 13 through 21. So 13 through 21, you'll see a graph there, or not a graph, but a chart that lays all those out there. We started to highlight kind of yellow, green, and red for each one as well. And we're not done with that. We still have to, okay, who's responsible and what's the timeline for that? We still have to get through that process. But that's what we're hoping to have done by the February meeting for you guys. My task for you guys as a group is look through this, mark it up, give us feedback, give us input. Again, we're going to send a survey out sometime next week to you guys. It'll be a Google survey. Give us that feedback on that, and we will take that and look at it and make adjustments from the group. One thing I did want to note before we move on is talking about mission, vision, and kind of the school motto on there. And what page was that on, guys? Page 2. Okay, so you see there at the top, and I sent this out. So we have a current mission statement, and this is something we'll put in the survey about that. And that's something that would have to go to the board ultimately for approval. All these items would be. But look at the current mission statement. It's a little wordy. Does it line up with everything that we truly believe in? So we did come up with a potential new mission statement. Doesn't mean that's what it's going to be. We just put a potential new mission statement in there. Okay, the potential new one was inspiring every Indian to achieve their best through learning, growth, and success. Then we really, looking through old documents and everything, we really didn't have a clear, what I would consider a vision statement. And so what we put on there for a new vision statement is we have the 4 E's. So engaging, empowering, encouraging, and educating. You'll see that branded throughout. And so putting that into a vision statement is engaging, empowering, encouraging, and educating students to achieve their full potential and become lifelong learners and leaders in their community. So that's something we've kind of have developed at this point in time. Then looking at a motto, okay, what are we going to go with? When people think of Mississippi Indians, what are we going to go with? Well, we already have it. Okay, do we brand it necessarily? Maybe not. A little bit here and there. But Tribe of Excellence, that's already out there. I mean, that's what we are. That's the motto. Okay, that's what we strive for, is being excellent in everything that we do here at the district. And so Leslie did a great job with that. Q's done a great job of that. Our admin and our teachers at every single building have done a great job of that, and that's something that I truly believe in. Looking at the core values, again, those aren't new. The core values have already been laid out there, but it's just putting them into the plan and on paper. We've had those in place for a few years, would you say? 3 years? So again, we'll send a survey out on that information. I want you guys to take a look at it again, give your honest feedback on that. I'm not going to spend time. I'm not going to waste your guys' time on going through goals. I'm a little ADHD myself, and so I can sit here and read something and give honest feedback, especially a 30-page document. So that's something where you guys can take that time and give some honest feedback through a survey. I feel would be best. So going in, okay. Looking more at the strategic plan, what do we do for our students? That's our strategic plan. Okay, what are our goals for our students? That's our focus area. Okay, what are our learning targets and performance targets for our students at Mississippi Community Schools? Dr. Kaiser, you want to chime in on learning targets and everything? The principals aren't quite aware of the systems of systems meetings, but we'll be rolling those out at some point.
So I'll talk mission and vision. Okay, I'm the guy with the 1.9 GPA into my sophomore year at Cathedral. So when we were doing our vision with my school board, it was really hard to remember all rocks are life ready, because I can remember that and I can measure it. So as you think about though, you're looking at it. The mission of Decatur Central High School is to challenge and inspire all to achieve their highest potential, but I can't measure that. That's what we have on this principle. So as you think about that, short and sweet, and it's gotta be measurable. A vision sets where you wanna go as a community, your mission is your way to get there, so. And again, moving forward, I hope I have a chance to work with the principals on, performance targets and learning targets. A performance target might be something that our dedicated maintenance transportation teams do, something, kind of holistic. A learning target is how we're gonna achieve academic achievement. So they're really the same thing, you lay it out, and this comes down to a lot of strategies. Again, hope to work with the administrators on the concept of system-to-system meetings. In my school district, my principals have to meet with me 3 times a year, and they gotta bring their data. I'm going down to Bedford, North Lawrence on February 3rd, I'm gonna work with their team on that. And then my teachers have to meet with my principals 3 times a year, and they have to bring their data. You have to be data-driven. And it becomes a very collaborative process, we're working together, grade levels coming together. Again, I refer to it as subtle accountability, but it's really working together as a team. You gotta have a target, you have to come up with your strict strategies how to get there. For example, we just went to Dibbles over what we're doing before because the previous program wasn't giving the measurements that we want. Now, if I say much more than I'm in trouble, but I know a little bit about it. One of my board members could never pronounce it. I said, just call it a testing program. So, but your performance targets, your academic targets, they guide what you do, the decisions you make. This strategic plan should give you a focus on where you're going as a district, and there's never an end date. It's always just kind of move forward. So, does that help?
Yep, perfect.
And by the way, Jeremy was one of my A students when I taught this stuff at Indiana State.
You told last time I was in Houston.
Well, in fact, I've only had one kid not pass the class within 8 to 12 years, so you're exemplary.
Okay, so honestly, that is really what I have for you guys. If you guys want to stay around and talk through the strategic plan, you are more than welcome to. But I'm not going to force you guys to stick around or anything like that. Like I said, we are going to create a survey, and this strategic plan is very much a rough draft. We need to continue to work through it and get feedback from you guys as well. One comment that was mentioned, hey, how do we get more community members there? I don't know what else I can do, guys. I mean, truly, I've reached out. I mean, other than you guys kind of rip somebody, bringing them in with you, I mean, you guys got to pull them in ultimately. So we're sending information out all the time and constantly encouraging people to come. Honestly, this is not a bad group. People say, hey, we need more feedback, more input. Dr. Price, how many Jerry's have at Bedford in the strategic planning group? About 35. How big's the district? A little bit bigger than us. So, I mean, overall, this is a pretty good group, I mean, I would say, for our size. So, we'd love to have more. We'd love to have student input and all that kind of stuff as well. And I'm not opposed to sending surveys out to kids as well to get their input on things, facilities included. So, any questions or anything? Statements? Okay. Any other information? I'll probably put this in the survey next week. Is there any other information that you guys would find valuable going forward that's truly missing at this point in time? Like, hey, I don't quite get that, or I need more information related to that. Okay. Well, hey, again, thanks for coming. Take some pizza, take a bottle of water. Thank you, Jessica, for getting that put together for us. Appreciate it. So, thanks for coming. And again, next meeting will be February 12th, I believe. So we'll send out information on it. Thanks again, guys.